Hi, it's Louise at Spiral Bright Insight, and I want to dedicate this video to talking a little bit about Neptune in Aries. Now, I'm going to be completely upfront and just share that as I've been sort of trying to feel into this transit and what it's likely to mean, how the energies are likely to show up and play out, I have really struggled. And I think that is due in a lot of ways to the fact that Neptune as a archetype, in terms of what it represents in astrology in our chart, is so um, elusive. This is not a tangible energy in any way. This is representing our collective subconscious, our psyche, our spirituality, the realms that lie beyond the 3D. So what is unseen? This is very mystical energy, absolutely about spirituality, very creative, very compassionate, all about inspiration, but really difficult to pin down and to define. When we're working with Neptune, there are no boundaries, there are no limitations, there is no structure, there is no container, because Neptune sort of connected to the sign of Pisces, connected to the 12th house, and astrology is basically formless, limitless. It represents all that is our mind, our imagination, which is infinite. So for that reason, I just kind of want to flag up now that I think it has been quite difficult to really, work it out and, make notes and think, what on earth am I going to talk about? And I have watched quite a few other videos about this whole transit, and it's tricky, but I mean, I think that in itself is really interesting, because let's put it in a little bit of context. So Neptune is one of the outer planets, so its movement being very slow, it takes 165 years to make its way around the entire chart. As an outer planet, this is more of a generational energy, a generational planet and archetype in our chart. So we are going to share the same degree of Neptune as, the people that were born around the same time as us. So Neptune has been in Pisces for the last 14 years. It spends approximately 14 years in a sign. And on Sunday, that just gone, 30th of March 2025, Neptune moved into 0 degrees of Aries. So Neptune has completed its full cycle round the wheel. Last 165 years or so have been, Neptune's journey round the zodiac through the 12 signs. And now, as of this week, Neptune is in a new cycle. So 0 degrees of Aries is the 0 point. This is the point of pure creation, pure potential. When we're working with 0 degrees, there is nothing really to base anything on. Anything is possible. It is about infinity, infinite potential. And just bearing in mind also that Neptune is only going to spend probably, I think it's about 7 or 8 months in Aries this year before it moves, or he moves retrograde back into Pisces, and that's on the 22nd of October when he moves back into Pisces. So this is kind of like a preview. This is Neptune trying on Aries for size, seeing what it's like, and bearing in mind the length of the transit of Neptune's sort of transit around the zodiac. This is new territory for all of us. There will be nobody alive at this time who was around when Neptune was in Aries last time. So we can look back and see, what was happening at that time, but we are really almost starting a new story. We're starting from a clean slate in so many ways, exploring this as completely fresh, like newborns, no prior experience, nothing to base it on necessarily, and we're literally on this new adventure. So Neptune is really doesn't really know what to expect in Aries. Therefore, why should we? And we can, in astrology, we can look at themes, we can suggest things that might happen, we can talk about the energies, but we can't ever really predict what Neptune in Aries is going to look like. Having said that, I'm going to talk about some of the potential themes in this video, and I also want to bring in some of the galactic energies, because as a galactic astrologer, there are some pretty potent alignments and connections coming up as Neptune moves through these early degrees of Aries. So let's kind of break those down as well and explore and suggest what they could mean. Of course, it is a collective transit because we all have 0 degrees of Aries somewhere in our chart, and because this is an outer planet, this is something that is going to really affect us all and show up for us all. But as I've said, it very much is about we don't know what to expect. So it is exciting. There is a little bit of sort of insecurity, not quite sure what's it going to be like, but at the same time we're kind of standing at this point in the 0 Aries. So the sun has already crossed this point. We had equinox a couple of weeks ago. Saturn will move into 0 degrees of Aries towards the end of May. We're also going to have Mercury and Venus are going to pass back over the 0 degrees of Aries. So this is a really, really potent degree at this time in astrology, and this is about a rebirth. This is about creating something new. This is about a new seed has been planted and it is about to sprout, and we really don't know what that plant or that flower or what it's going to look like. How is it going to show up? It's all very new, very uncertain, but also very exciting and very fresh. And I would sort of remind us as well, I think it's worth sort of pointing out, I think most of us are aware of this, but as at the same time as Neptune is in Aries now and the sun is slightly further ahead also in Aries, there is still a huge presence in Pisces. So we are expanding into something new. We are creating something new. Neptune is about a vision. So this is a new vision for the world. But at the same time, we've got a lot of energies and a lot is still crumbling, a lot is still dissolving. There are huge endings, which is really part of this cycle. And that's the beauty with astrology. The wheel is always turning, the planets are always moving, so there is always evolution, there is always growth, there is always forward momentum. Even when we are in retrograde, we're still able to see that at some point things are going to start moving forward again. So there's such a huge focus on things crumbling, on falling apart, on dissolving, on being removed or being released, of letting go. But it is that process that enables us to create space to bring in the new. So Aries as a sign, we've talked about Aries, I did an equinox video a couple of weeks ago, but just to remind us, Aries is cardinal fire. So Neptune is a planet very much linked to water, to Poseidon, to the oceans, the seas, that psyche, the void, imagination, creativity, the media, escapism, what we do to entertain ourselves, to escape our reality. So really Neptune wants us to escape our reality in so many ways, to connect with a higher source, a higher version of self, the higher self, the angelic realms, the ascended masters, all that is unseen, that you can't actually touch, but is there. And of course Neptune is also about faith, which is a huge theme for this year. So we've got this combination of Neptune, the watery planet, with Aries, which is cardinal fire. So Aries is the first sign. We are starting from scratch, from ground zero. There is a strong connection with the warrior with Aries because of its ruling planet Mars. This is also bringing us back to, when we're working with strong Aries, we are coming back to the self, to the individual, to the I am. Very independent, very self-contained, very sovereign. It's fine, I can do it on my own. I don't need any help. I don't need any influence. I don't need any input. I'm just going to go forward and I'm just going to get it done. That is kind of what Aries is like. So very pioneering energy, but very much about it's me, and I'm good, and I don't need to bring anything else in. I'm just going to go for it. I don't need to worry about what's going on. I know who I am. I'm just going to go straight forward. The combination of water and fire is interesting. I've talked about this fairly recently as well. And the fact, water can put out the fire. So we have to be aware of that. And I think actually that, has got a lot of potential for, when you consider that, there are so many conflicts on in our world. There is so much war, there is so much division, there is so much heat, so much anger. The Neptune and the water of Neptune has the potential to actually put out that, to sort of to put out the fire, to lessen the heat, to detense, put out the fire, to to turn off all that kind of, to turn down the heat. And I think that, again, this is a 14-year transit that we're working with, so nothing is going to happen overnight. But I think over the next few years, and obviously we also need to bear in mind there are other big transits taking place at the same time, and it's not just about Neptune and Aries. But I feel there is going to be a real invitation and a real opportunity to move away from conflict, to move away from that battle, that warrior, that need to fight, that need to compete, that division. And again, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because that really steps into the Aries energy really beautifully. But so we have this potential for a lot of the fires to be put out, and to a lot of cleansing to take place in terms of the war and conflict. But also fire and water, depending on the alchemical process that we're working with, will create steam. And obviously steam can really blur the vision. It can make it really hard to see what's going on. It can almost blanket, cover up what is the truth. So again, we've had a lot of really big confusion and deceit and illusion going on with Neptune and Pisces. There's no question of that. And there is an opportunity, as Neptune is now in Aries, for this to create some more clarity. But there is still potentially steamy windows and steamy mirrors, and it all is not quite what it seems. But also, if you think about steam and its properties, steam is really, really useful in terms of clearing away old dirt, getting rid of the grime, clearing the passages. If you think we go and we sit in the sauna to sweat out the toxins from our body. So again, that is also potential. It is going to be, or it feels like, a really brilliant, beautiful opportunity to release so much that has been possibly clogging us up. And I'm thinking about, in a physical way, but also mentally, emotionally. So while we've still got all this Pisces energy, and that is about releasing, we've got this beautiful energy of Neptune in Aries, the combination of water and fire, to create the steam, to really cleanse and remove all that is coming to the surface. So let's talk about some of the potential themes that we're likely to have. And obviously this is not definitive. There are many, many, many things that we could say, and I'm sure lots of ideas and insight will come to me over the course of this transit, and lots of other astrologers will be talking about it as well. But, for sure, because Neptune represents our spiritual self, our dreams, our visions, our subconscious, our psyche, and is linked to creativity and art and the muse, what inspires us. I feel there is a potential here for a massive spiritual awakening. And I don't think it's just going to be down to Neptune and Aries. I think there are other transits taking place that are going to play into this. But Neptune and Aries is really the birth of the spiritual warrior. And so that, to me, feels really exciting. Now, Aries is a very fast sign. Aries is not really, there's no patience when you're working with Aries. So, things are likely to speed up in terms of spiritual perspective and spiritual ideas and spiritual inspiration. If you channel, that is likely to step up and start coming in much more quickly, much more clearly, and much more insistent, because Aries is like, come on, let's go. There's no time to waste. So I feel that is likely to play out. I've mentioned it already, but this opportunity to write a new story, to create a new vision, and with the speed, anything that we think of is likely to be put into action and set in motion much more quickly than perhaps it has done before. So this is going to be a great time for manifestation. Think of something and it becomes real. Literally, it's set in motion. Things will start happening. It does mean that we have to be very mindful of what we are thinking, and also understanding the power of our thoughts and the power of our words and the intention that they create and the messages and the energy and the frequency that they send out. So I feel that is going to be very much coming forward. I also feel in terms of leadership, because Aries is the leader, that we're going to see a lot of leaders stepping forward who are much more spiritually inclined, who are much more compassionate, because Neptune is ruled by Pisces, or Pisces is ruled by Neptune. This is about unity consciousness. So whereas we do have Aries, which is all about the self, there's going to have to be some compromise with Aries, Neptune and Aries, because Neptune wants to consider all, the collective, see the bigger picture, bring in, this unity consciousness, understand and teach that we are all interconnected and that the actions of one person has a knock-on effect on everybody else, whether we're aware of it or whether that's just happening energetically. Also connections to ancestral energies and wounds and experiences that might be coming forward a lot more, because we're starting to see how we are all connected, so much more than we ever had before. And of course, as we start to realize that and we start to embody it and it becomes a reality and a truth, I feel that is going to really help to dissolve the conflict, dissolve the competition, dissolve the feeling that we are all, is sort of, you're on your own and you just have to sort out yourself. Because yes, that is important and we do need to take responsibility for ourselves, but we also need to realize that every action, every word, every thought, everything that we do is having an effect on our environment, on our frequency, on the other people around us, and that we are connected. So again, that I feel that is going to potentially be a factor in helping to break down the need to stand against someone, because we start to realize that actually we are all the same from a soul perspective. I feel it's going to really help us to connect to the divine, create a divine connection with the self much more than ever before. This kind of connection to the higher self, which is part of the self, but again, that comes through Neptune. That feels really, really aligned. And as Neptune dissolves, again, Aries is the ego, the I am, the identity. So again, I think that feeds into the whole unity consciousness perspective. But where we have been very much in the ego, where we have been in fight or flight mode, where we have had sort of, we've been in real survival mode, I feel like that is likely to start dissolving. And again, a lot has to happen for that to become a reality, but I feel that is a potential. I feel that, again, with the dissolving sort of abilities of Neptune, any barriers that we've had around the self, or that we've sort of been, where we've been self-sabotaging, or where we've been blocking ourselves from having access to gifts, understanding, knowledge, or other versions of the self, I feel that those barriers are likely to be dissolved. So we're going to be stepping into a lot more of who we are. And it's very spiritual, very beautiful, very divine. And it's also likely, I've talked about the illusion. Yes, the steam might make things cloudier and harder to see, but the steam will purify and will also transmute. So ultimately, when the steam clears, we're going to be able to see things with much more clarity, have much clearer vision. And that, again, may affect, things that have been going on, particularly linked to wars, linked to leadership, all these Aries themes. That may also be much clearer. So we're going to be able to see, we may actually become quite disillusioned with our leaders and what, has been going on. But again, that will all play out in time, I am sure. And the other thing that I feel is quite possible is because Aries is the identity, I feel that we're going to have access to greater understanding and greater wisdom and knowledge of who we are. And, that can play out in many different ways. We could actually uncover the true history of humanity and mankind and Earth. That is one possibility. But it's about connecting to the truth of who you are inside and understanding that everything comes from the self, that it all starts with the self, coming into a wholeness, an understanding and a connection with the self in ways that we have never actually been able to access or bring in before. And I think that as well, having a really strong understanding of who you are and standing in yourself and the knowledge of who you are and the truth of who you are is going to really have a knock-on effect on how you show up in the world and how we all show up in the world. And if this is happening at a mass level, on a mass scale, then you can just see the potential for the shifts and how, it's going to affect the way we show up. It's going to affect the way we relate to other people, the way we experience our world, and it just feels like there is so much potential here. But I just want to reiterate some of the things that I brought up in my equinox video when I was talking about the 0 degree point of Aries, because this is a really strong, potent degree. It is on the world axis. And because obviously Neptune is an outer planet, this is something that affects us all, that affects all of humanity. But it is about fertility. It is about renewal. It is about purity and coming back to that innocence, the start of all that is and all that was and all that could be and all that will be. It's the totality. It's the beginning. It's the end. It's nothing. It's everything. It's the void. It's the womb space. And it is from that womb space and that void that we can create something new. So I talked about Neptune being, linked to infinity, to timelessness, this endless energy. And again, that's how it feels. But in saying that, that is why it feels as well so difficult to articulate and to really define, because I don't think we really can at this stage. So 0 degrees of Aries is for me a portal to the new, to something that, we can step through the portal into a whole new world, or we can reach into the portal and pull out something, again, how it's going to work, it's hard to really know. And I don't think anybody knows at this stage, but there is just a lot of potential here. And so, we are collapsing and dissolving and breaking apart at the same time as we are expanding. And with the strong Pisces in energy as well, we are becoming so multidimensional, which does explain why sort of being physical and navigating, everything that's going on is so challenging right now for so many of us, for all of us really, even if people don't have sort of an awareness and aren't conscious of why it feels difficult. They just know that things are happening, and it's very destabilizing. Okay, so there's two galactic cosmic energies that I want to bring into this, and the first is the supergalactic center. Now, Neptune has been in an opposition to the supergalactic center for a while, because the orbs that we work with or that we use with these cosmic points are quite wide. Personally, I tend to stick to 4 degrees, maybe 4.5 degrees. With the supergalactic center, which is at 2 degrees of Libra currently, Neptune in the late degrees of Pisces has been in an opposition to this really powerful cosmic point. But now Neptune is in Aries, the energy shifts. And because it is a direct opposition almost, there's 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees in it, much more active because it's no longer an out of sign opposition. So when we're talking about the galactic center, this is a black hole. This is magnetic. A magnetic energy, something that really from a human perspective is really, really difficult to define, to articulate, to explain, to understand, to kind of get your head around. But it is, it is an energy that creates sort of sudden change. Black holes are not predictable. So this is unpredictable energy. It connects us to something that is very multidimensional, that is taking us beyond the 3D, beyond maybe even the 4, 5, 6D, into a completely different realm. It is very much linked to alchemy, to transmutation, to transformation, to evolution, and it serves as a black hole. It is sort of pushing lots of really high frequency energy towards us so that we can ascend, we can sort of, grow, we can raise our frequency, and our consciousness is going to increase as a result of that. That's kind of natural fallout of that. But it is also stretching us towards it. So there's this really push pull, and with the opposition, that creates an even more tension in this opposition, this stretching, and it is as if we are being pulled. So through Neptune in Aries, we are being stretched to an understanding of something that is just so much greater than us, so much greater than the self. With the supergalactic center in Libra, this is also about bringing in the reality and the experience of relationships and relating to something outside of the self. So this is going to include close relationships, partners, spouses, business partners, people that you have, that you work in collaboration with at a very close, very tight knit level. So, but also the experience of our world outside of ourselves. And the supergalactic center just stretches us out so that we can have all these experiences, so that we can experience all that is, taking us way, way, way beyond, in order to make us realize that actually what we are looking for is within. Because the thing with the black hole element and aspect of the supergalactic center is that it is essentially a void. It is the cosmic womb. It is nothingness. And so if we're kind of constantly being stretched out towards that, we are going to have this feeling, this lack of, or this kind of like this empty hole, this empty space that makes you feel uncomfortable because you're constantly aware of it. And I've got the supergalactic center conjunct Pluto in my chart, so I'm really very familiar with this energy. It is this need to constantly fill a hole. You're always looking for something, you're always searching for something, you're always wanting more. It's like, oh, I'm going to do that, and if I try that, if I move into that job, or if I go into that relationship, or if I buy that thing, or if I do that activity, or I embark on that course, I'm going to feel fulfilled. That's it. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm searching for. And then you do it and you're like, no, I still feel empty. There's still that nagging feeling. That's still that emptiness, that void. And it's like, okay, so maybe if I go and do that job and I maybe, try that and spend time with them, then that's going to sort it out. And it never feels full. It never feels complete. And that is because you're looking for something outside of the self. You're looking for an experience or a thing, a material thing, or a relationship, or an experience, a situation that is outside of the self. And the supergalactic center is really helping us to experience all of that, because Libra is the other. It is a cosmic mirror, so it's reflecting all of that back to us as well. But ultimately, it's going to stretch us so far that we have no choice but to come back to the self. Because the truth is, and the supergalactic center will teach us this, although it may take a lifetime or more to learn it, that we are here to realize and to learn that actually what we're looking for lies within. And that is really, I feel, a lot of what Neptune in Aries is going to help us connect with and learn. Obviously now at the beginning, we've got a long way ahead. So this is not an overnight process, but I feel that with this incredibly powerful opposition, and this opposition is going to be active for all of this year, all of next, possibly into 2027 as well. So, this is something that we're working with for the short to medium term. But it is about, and everything in our world, everything in our experience, and also this kind of, I want to bring in the idea of contracts and agreements, because Libra is about contracts and agreements. So it's almost like a soul contract, a soul agreement, that we're going to come in, we're going to experience all this stuff. We've got all these relationships lined up, all these triggers, all these challenges, all these points of beauty and inspiration and joy and awe, to help us remember that actually we need to come back to the self, because that is what this journey that we are on is about. We are coming back to the self, which is ultimately source. So, we separated from source to experience our world, to experience different realities, different star systems, different lifetimes. But we are trying to get back to source, because that is where home is. That is where we will feel complete. That is where we will feel fulfilled. And we need to really work out and come back to the truth that that is actually in us, because we are source. Even though we're a fractal of source, we have source within us. We are source embodied. So this is kind of what I feel the Supergalactic Center is serving up for us at this time. It is encouraging us to see things from a very different perspective, from a multi-galactic perspective, kind of bringing in this new wavelength almost. But there is no because the magnetism and the force and the power of the black hole, it's non-negotiable. I don't think anyone is getting out of this transit without having to work with this energy, aware, whether they're aware of it or not. So again, that feels really exciting. It feels overwhelming. It feels like, oh gosh, can we actually do this? But the truth is, and the answer is that yes, because we're here in this time working with these energies, and this is what we signed up for. And the other beautiful thing with the Supergalactic Center, because I'm being sure more and more that it is like a cosmic mirror. So, we can sort of look out towards it, and it will literally reflect back the new version of self. So Neptune in Aries is creating this vision, this kind of imaginative, and it's so creative, Neptune. In Aries, it's like creating this vision and this imagination and, this beautiful new story, this new picture, this new painting of who we are now. And the Supergalactic Center is going to mirror that back to us so we can see it. Again, this is about being able to see parts of the self that we couldn't before, access parts of the self that we couldn't before, because we are evolving. We are stepping into a new version of self. And this is really, we are being stretched, we are being reflected in order to come back to the self. And the other significant point that is going to be activated, again is already active but is going to become stronger, is the Shapley attractor, and that lies at 2 degrees of Scorpio. So this is creating a quincunx to Neptune in Aries, and quincunxes are they are a little bit awkward, a little bit uncomfortable, because the two signs, Aries and Scorpio, have no point of commonality. They have nothing in common, so but they're having to work together. So 0 degrees of Neptune, 2 degrees of Scorpio, they're having to interact, they're having to talk to each other, but they don't have anything in common. They don't know what to say. They don't really know how to act around each other. And it is awkward. It's like when you're a teenager, or if you're at a social event and you just feel really awkward and like not sure of yourself. Neptune in Aries, not really sure, what's happening. Shapley attractor, however, very powerful cosmic point, and very much linked to the frequency of truth. Now, when we're working with a Shapley attractor, everything has to fall away, and we have to stand in pure authenticity, pure integrity, the pure truth of who we are, of what is. There are no masks, there is no illusion, there is no fakery, there is no fake it till you make it. With Shapley attractor, you just have to be your vulnerable, true, authentic, pure self. No pretending. And that is a little bit tricky, because of Neptune, might quite like to pretend, might quite like to create illusions and dreams and visions and explore and like escape, but the Shapley's like, no, it's time to really connect to the whole truth and nothing but the truth of who you are and what this is, this reality. And of course with Scorpio, this is about going deep. This is about looking beneath the surface, which again, not always comfortable, because there can be a lot of shadows hidden there, but it's also about acknowledging that the process of doing that is deeply healing, deeply transformative. And this is how we can regenerate, which is really beautiful, because effectively that is what the 0 point of Aries is helping us to do. So it is really reminding us that the power that we have access to, but maybe it's been hidden, lies in the dark, it lies in the shadow, and that a lot of shadow work is part of this process. So that is super cool. And I'm going to talk about as it sort of approaches. Actually, I think it's probably only next week coming round, but Atlantis is going to come into a conjunction with the Shapley tractor, and then we'll move back to 0 degrees of Scorpio, because Atlantis is in retrograde motion at the moment. So there's definitely Atlantean themes, wisdom, ideas, energies coming through that are going to be activated through this quincunx. So, again, I'll come on and talk about that separately, I think, because that feels really quite exciting and intriguing as well. And then, of course, as we move further into the year and and Uranus approaches or moves into Gemini, there's going to be a grand minor trine again, which we've had before, but this time they're in different signs. So Pluto in the air sign Aquarius, Neptune in fire in Aries, and Uranus will be in air in Gemini. So this is creating really fascinating and exciting potential, again, for awakening, for a reset of the mind, for new vision that is being supported by Uranus, which is about awakening, which is about enlightenment, which is about breaking down to break through, supported by Pluto in Aquarius, which is about transformation at a collective level, transformation of society, transformation of our ideas, and again, and our enlightenment ultimately, because Aquarius is very much linked to enlightenment. Obviously, Pluto in Aquarius with Uranus rules Aquarius. This is going to be, this is going to be a really exciting minor grand trine, which is really holding space for us as we move through these huge times of transformation and all this exciting energy, bringing in the multi-galactic, bringing in the connection to the Pleiades, which Uranus is going to activate as he moves through that final degree of Taurus and into 0 of Gemini. Supergalactic center is there as well at the base, creating a kite formation. It's so cool. It really is so cool. But again, that's going to we'll develop that as we move closer to it, because we've still got Uranus has still got to get through the final degrees of Taurus before he sort of dips his toe into Gemini. So we'll come back to that. But I hope I have sort of shared some insight and some ideas and some suggestions that have resonated, and I hope you're feeling as excited as I am. But again, just to acknowledge that we are at the very beginning. So I know people get really excited about the ingress of an outer planet into a new sign, and it is a really big deal. It doesn't happen that often, and when there's other outer planets sort of supporting or challenging whatever in aspect, again, that intensifies and enhances the impact. But I think because we've got so much activity in Pisces, because Venus and Mercury are still retrograde, we're not really going to be able to see what Neptune in Pisces is going to bring for a while. So it's just about being in that sort of nothingness state, that void, and starting to think about what is it that you want to bring in, what can you create that is coming from the self, that is coming deep from within. It might be ancient, it might be, as Venus has gone backwards, that she has collected and reconnected to and reclaimed a lot of gifts that were yours in other lifetimes, and it's time to bring those back online, to bring them in, to activate them, to start working with them and start using them. So again, but just sort of being and not expecting things to change overnight. We're still in this void, this kind of like suspended, where there is a lot collapsing, there is a lot releasing, a lot sort of being removed. So it's about trusting that process and not sort of trying to run before you can walk, because you remember, as babies, it takes time to learn all those skills and to sort of start to, become more of the self, more of an individual. So it's like, we're right at the very beginning. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you as always for watching. I hope I've inspired you. I hope I've shared something that you find of value. Please like the video. I have a super thanks button if you wish to express your appreciation for what I'm doing for this work, for the content I'm sharing. And please also sign up for my mailing list, which you can do so on my website, spiralbright.co.uk. And that's just so I can send out my monthly newsletter, tell you what's coming up in astrology terms for the month ahead. And as and when I have any offers or anything that I'm launching, you will be the first to hear about that too. So sending lots of love. Yeah. And, you know, again, just a reminder, we're all in it together. So, yeah, none of us are alone, even if we feel we are. That's kind of, okay, that's a message I need to share with someone. So, yeah, there you go. But sending lots of love, and I will be back with you soon.